The aftermath of the press conference was a whirlwind, sweeping through Joinstock like an unstoppable force. The once vibrant halls, filled with the hum of routine corporate chatter, now buzzed with a different energy, one tinged with shock, confusion, and the unmistakable presence of fear. James Thomas stood in his office, staring out over the Washington, D.C. skyline. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the city, casting a golden glow on the streets below. The events of the past few hours replayed in his mind, each revelation and confrontation vivid and etched into his memory, as if they had just happened moments ago. A gentle knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, turning as Ashley stepped into the room. Her face was a blend of exhaustion and unwavering resolve, as if she were holding herself together despite the weight of the world. "Dad," she said, quietly closing the door behind her. "Have you seen the news?" "It's everywhere." James nodded, motioning for her to join him by the window. "I've seen it." The story spread faster than we could have imagined. They stood side by side, gazing out at the city, still stunned by the force they had unleashed. Just weeks ago, Ashley had been a nursing student, her life far removed from the world of corporate secrets and intrigue. Now her image flashed across news channels around the globe, celebrated as the whistleblower who had exposed one of the biggest corporate scandals in recent history. "Are you okay?" James asked, his voice soft as he placed a comforting hand on his daughter's shoulder. "I know this isn't what you imagined when you first warned me about the board meeting." Ashley turned to him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Honestly, I'm not sure. It's all moving so fast, but I don't regret it, not for a second. We did the right thing." Dad. James's eyes glistened with pride as he pulled Ashley into a tight embrace. "We did, sweetheart, and I couldn't have done it without you." In that moment, the weight of everything they had gone through seemed to lift, replaced by the quiet realization that they had not only uncovered the truth, but had also built an unbreakable bond in the process. Together, they had not only saved Tech Vision but had also found something far more significant: the strength of their family. Their brief moment of silence was abruptly interrupted by another knock on the door, more urgent this time. Joseph Sullivan entered in a hurry, his complexion pale, his eyes wide with a mix of panic and disbelief. "James, Ashley," he panted. "You need to see this." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed the remote from James's desk and switched on the large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. The screen flickered to life, and the news anchor's tense voice filled the room. "Breaking news." The anchor announced, her voice strained. "Reports are flooding in about a fire at the Washington, D.C. offices of Global Communications. Witnesses describe multiple explosions." The three of them stood frozen, staring in stunned silence as the camera showed thick smoke pouring from the upper floors of a sleek, modern skyscraper. The wail of fire trucks echoed in the background as firefighters battled the raging flames. Ashley's hand flew to her mouth in shock. "Do you think this could be connected to our press conference?" James's jaw tightened, his eyes never leaving the screen. "It's too much of a coincidence. David, get me everything you can on this. Find out who was in that building, what floors were affected, everything." As Joseph rushed out to gather information, James turned to Ashley, his expression grim. "This is moving faster than we anticipated. Whoever's behind this conspiracy won't back down without a fight." Ashley nodded, her thoughts racing. "What's our next move?" Before James could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The name on the caller ID sent a chill through his body. "Jonathan Ryder, CEO of Global Communications." He hesitated for a moment before answering, putting the call on speakerphone. "Ryder," James said, his voice cold and controlled. "You really have done it now." Thomas Ryder's voice crackled from the speaker, a dangerous mix of fury and something akin to begrudging respect. "I have to give you credit. I didn't think you had the guts." James's brow furrowed. "What's this about, Ryder? If you're calling about the press conference," Ryder interrupted with a sharp laugh. "That's old news. I'm talking about the fire at my office. I didn't think you'd go this far." James's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you implying we had something to do with that fire?" "That's insane, Ryder. We're not responsible for that." Ryder's voice turned venomous. "Cut the crap. "You've declared war, Thomas, and believe me, you have no idea what you're up against." The line went dead, leaving James and Ashley staring at each other, processing the weight of Ryder's words. Ashley's voice was shaky as she asked, "What did he mean by bigger than anything you can imagine? What have we gotten ourselves into?" James shook his head, his mind racing as the pieces began to fall into place. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm afraid we're about to find out." James shook his head, his thoughts spinning in a storm of uncertainty. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said quietly, his voice tense. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out." Just then, Joseph rushed into the room, his face drained of color. "James, Ashley, you need to see this right now." Without wasting a moment, he handed James a tablet, the screen displaying an encrypted message board they had been monitoring for days. James's eyes skimmed the screen, his expression darkening with each word he read. "What is it?" Ashley asked, stepping closer, her eyes flicking nervously to the screen. James's voice was low and filled with foreboding as he read aloud, "Project Phoenix is compromised. Initiate Protocol Omega. All assets to go dark immediately. The syndicate will not be defeated." Ashley frowned, confusion creasing her brow. "The syndicate? What is that? What does it mean?" James set the tablet down, his mind racing as the weight of the message settled in. "I'm not entirely sure, but I think we've just uncovered a much larger operation than we realized. This conspiracy, it's deeper than we could have ever imagined." As the full gravity of the situation began to sink in, the lights in the office abruptly flickered and went out. The hum of computers and electronics fell silent, leaving only an unsettling stillness in the air. What the Joseph began, but James held up a hand, signaling for silence. "Nobody move," he whispered urgently. "This isn't a simple blackout. We're under attack." Ashley's heart pounded as she strained to see through the thick darkness. The distant echoes of running footsteps and muffled voices outside the office made her breath catch in her throat. James acted swiftly, gripping Ashley's hand and pulling her toward a hidden panel in the wall. "There's a secure elevator behind this," he murmured, his voice low. "It leads to a safe room below. We need to get there now." As James worked frantically to unlock the hidden door, Ashley turned to Joseph, urgency in her voice. "Come on," she urged, her hand reaching for him. Joseph shook his head, his face pale, yet filled with determination. "No," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "I'll stay. I'll buy you both some time. It's the least I can do." After everything. Before Ashley could argue, the office door burst open with a force that echoed through the room. Dark, looming figures flooded in, their faces concealed by masks, moving with alarming precision. "Go," Joseph shouted, throwing himself toward the intruders in a desperate attempt to hold them off. James quickly pulled Ashley into the hidden elevator, just as the office erupted into chaos. The last image burned into Ashley's mind before the panel slid shut was of Joseph, grappling with one of the masked figures, his expression a blend of resolve and redemption. As the elevator plunged downward, Ashley clung to her father, her heart hammering in her chest. The rapid descent mirrored the whirlwind of emotions that tore through her mind. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with a mix of fear and disbelief. "What's happening? Who are they?" James's jaw tightened, his face set in a determined grimace. "I don't know, sweetheart," he muttered, eyes fixed on the descending numbers. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out just how far this goes." The elevator came to a screeching halt, its doors sliding open to reveal a high-tech safe room, designed to withstand any threat. As they stepped inside, the heavy door sealed shut with a loud, final thud, isolating them from the chaos outside. James moved swiftly to a bank of computers, his fingers dancing over the keys as he brought the system online. The monitors blinked to life, each screen showing live feeds from the building's security cameras. Ashley's breath caught as the images revealed the pandemonium unfolding on the executive floor. Masked intruders like shadows moved with calculated precision, ransacking offices while terrified Tech Vision employees scrambled for safety or attempted to fight back. "We need to act," Ashley said, her voice tight with urgency. "We can't stay here and do nothing while our people are out there fighting for their lives." James's face darkened as he glanced at the monitors, his voice steady but full of resolve. "You're right. But we can't rush in blindly. We're up against something we don't yet understand." As they watched the feeds, each new scene adding weight to the growing sense of dread, Ashley couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was just the beginning. What had started as a corporate scandal was now spiraling into something far more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. The press conference had shaken the very foundation of their company, but it had also attracted the attention of hidden forces, shadowy organizations with agendas of their own, ones that were willing to do whatever it took to maintain control. Standing side by side in the secure bunker, James and Ashley knew the battle was far from over. The stakes had reached unprecedented heights, and the enemies they now faced were more formidable than they had ever expected. Yet, even as the weight of it all pressed down on them, Ashley felt an undeniable surge of determination. They had come this far, and there was no turning back. They weren't about to falter now. The next phase of their fight had just begun. Together, father and daughter, they would not rest until tech vision and the truth were protected at any cost. They had set this course in motion, and no matter the cost, they were committed to seeing it through to the end. James worked tirelessly at the computer, his hands moving quickly over the keys as he coordinated with security, desperately trying to regain control of the situation. The pressure mounted, but he remained focused, determined to protect everything they had fought for. Ashley's mind raced, her thoughts spinning with questions. Who were these mysterious intruders? What exactly was the syndicate, and how deep did this conspiracy really run? The answers felt just beyond her grasp, like a shadow lurking in the distance. One thing was undeniably clear: their lives, and the world they knew, had already changed forever. What had started with a chance encounter in a hospital room had escalated into a conspiracy that stretched far beyond their expectations. Now, as they stood on the edge of this monumental revelation, they realized they were caught in the middle of something that could shake not only the corporate world, but everything they had ever known. The alarms rang loudly in the background, their shrill sound slicing through the tense silence. More masked figures flooded the building, and Ashley's resolve only strengthened. There was no turning back. She had found her father, uncovered a massive corporate plot, and helped bring the truth to light. Now she knew they would have to face the repercussions of their actions. But deep within her, a fire burned, a determination to press on and uncover the full extent of the shadowy forces at play. The next chapter of their story was about to unfold. Ashley Thomas was ready to meet it head-on, her heart filled with the love of her newfound family, the strength of her convictions, and the unwavering resolve to see justice done. No matter the cost. The quiet hum of computers and the rhythmic beeping of security systems echoed through the underground safe room. James Thomas and his daughter Ashley sat close together, their eyes fixed on the array of monitors before them. The screens displayed an unsettling scene unfolding at Joinstock's headquarters. Masked intruders, moving with chilling precision, were sweeping through the building. Tech Vision employees, some trapped and trembling, others bravely resisting, fought for their lives. "We can't just sit here, Dad," Ashley said, her voice tight with urgency. "We have to do something. Our people are in danger." James nodded grimly, his fingers dancing across the keyboard in a frantic effort to regain control of the security systems. His mind was racing, calculating the best course of action. "You're right, sweetheart. But we have to approach this carefully. We're facing forces we barely understand." As if to underscore his words, one of the screens flickered to life. A new image appeared, and Ashley's blood ran cold. It was the man, the same one she had seen with Adam Boyd, the one with the chilling eyes and that cruel, mocking smile. Now on the screen he glared directly into the camera, his gaze cold and confident, a blend of victory and disdain etched across his face. "Mr. Thomas," the man's voice crackled from the speakers, smooth yet ominous. "I believe it's time we had a little chat." James's jaw tightened as he leaned toward the microphone, his voice steely. "Who are you? What do you want?" The man's laugh echoed through the speakers, devoid of any warmth or amusement. "Who I am doesn't matter. What matters, Mr. Thomas, is what I represent. You've stumbled into something far beyond your comprehension. The syndicate does not take kindly to interference." Ashley's thoughts raced as she tried to absorb the gravity of the man's words. The syndicate, the very same shadowy organization mentioned in the encrypted message they had intercepted earlier. This wasn't just a corporate takeover. What they were up against was far darker, more complex, and far more dangerous than they had imagined. What is the syndicate? James Thomas asked, his voice surprisingly calm despite the tension in his posture. And what does it have to do with joint stock? The man on the screen grinned, the smirk twisting his features. The syndicate is the future, Mr. Thomas. We are the architects of a new world, one where the distinction between corporations and governments, between nations and global empires, is a mere formality. Tech vision's innovations, just a small part of a much grander design. Ashley felt a sharp surge of indignation rise within her. So this whole thing, the takeover, the threats, the violence, it's all for some twisted vision of the future. The man's gaze shifted to Ashley, his eyes narrowing with cold calculation. Ah, the prodigal daughter. You've proven yourself quite the thorn in our plans. I'll admit, we misjudged you. James instinctively moved to stand between Ashley and the screen, a protective gesture. Leave her out of this. This is between you and me, and between you and join stock. The man's tone sharpened, growing more menacing. Oh, but Miss Thomas has made herself a key player in this. And now, you both have a choice to make. The screen flickered and split, revealing several live camera feeds from around the building. Ashley gasped as she saw the familiar faces of their colleagues' Tech Vision employees, bound and terrified, held at gunpoint. The fear on their faces was palpable. You have 1 hour, the man's voice continued, chillingly calm. Surrender yourselves, come to your office, Mr. Thomas, and we can discuss terms. Refuse, and he waved his hand toward the hostages on the screen. I think the consequences are clear. The feed abruptly cut out, leaving them staring at the darkened screen, their own reflections staring back at them. Dad, Ashley whispered, her voice trembling. What are we going to do? James turned to his daughter, his face a blend of grim determination and undeniable fear. We're going to fight, sweetheart. But we're going to be smart about it. The clock was ticking. The stakes had never been higher. But with his daughter at his side, James was prepared to face whatever came next. Together, they would take on the shadows, threatening to destroy everything they had worked for. For the next 45 minutes, James Thomas and Ashley worked with quiet urgency, piecing together their strategy. They sifted through building blueprints, security protocols, and every shred of evidence they had collected about the conspiracy. The weight of the moment was heavy, yet they remained focused, knowing they had only one chance to act. As the deadline drew near, they prepared themselves to leave the sanctuary of the secure room and face the forces threatening everything they had worked to protect. Remember, James said, his voice steady but filled with an intensity that made Ashley's heart skip a beat. Stick to the plan no matter what. We do this together. Ashley took a deep breath, her pulse racing as she nodded. Together. She affirmed, her voice resolute. The elevator slowly ascended, and as they rose through the building, Ashley's mind flashed back to the fateful moment in the hospital when she had made the decision to warn her father. It was a choice she never could have predicted would lead her down this dangerous path, a path that had revealed the truth of her heritage, uncovered a vast conspiracy, and now brought her face to face with the shadowy forces that sought to control it all. When the elevator doors finally opened, they revealed the hushed, tense atmosphere of the executive floor at Join Stock. The air was thick with uncertainty as they stepped out, every instinct on high alert. As they approached James's office, the door suddenly swung open, and the very man from the video feed appeared before them in person, his cold eyes and cruel smile confirming their worst fears. The man was even more intimidating, in person tall, imposing, with an air of cold authority that seemed to swallow up the space around him. Mr. Thomas, he said smoothly, his voice dripping with calm menace. How thoughtful of you to join us. Please come in. As they stepped into the room, Ashley's gaze quickly took in the transformed office. What once had been a space of innovation and collaboration now felt like a fortified command center. Armed guards stood rigid, their eyes scanning the room, while rows of computers displayed live data and surveillance feeds. In the corner, Joseph, Emily, and Sharon were visibly guarded, their every movement monitored by the masked figures who flanked them. Now the man continued, settling into James's chair behind the desk, a smug smile tugging at his lips. "Let's have a conversation about the future of joint stock, shall we?" James stepped forward, his demeanor unwavering, his voice calm yet firm. "Before we discuss anything further, I want assurances that my people will be kept safe." The man waved his hand dismissively, his expression almost condescending. Of course. Of course. We're not savages, Mr. Thomas. Once we've come to an agreement, your employees will be free to go on the condition they understand the importance of discretion. Of course. Ashley's heart raced as she watched the exchange unfold. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, scanning the room for any vulnerability they could exploit. As her eyes skimmed one of the computer screens, something strange caught her attention, a subtle flicker amidst the data streaming across the monitor. In an instant, it clicked. The fail-safe code they had embedded in the systems during their hasty preparations. It was active, waiting for the right moment to be triggered. She met her father's eyes, giving him a barely perceptible nod. James didn't flinch, but Ashley could see the slight tension in his shoulders relax. He had noticed it too. James Thomas's gaze hardened as he confronted the man behind the desk. "You speak of the future," he said, his voice steady but tinged with disgust. "But what you're proposing is little more than tyranny disguised as corporate progress. The syndicate, with all its lofty ideals, is merely a group of power-hungry individuals trying to force the world to conform to their warped vision." The man's eyes darkened, a dangerous glint flashing within them. "You're underestimating us, Mr. Thomas," the man replied, his voice cold. "The syndicate has been behind world-shaping events for decades: wars, financial crises, and technological revolutions, each step meticulously planned to lead us to this moment. Tech vision is just a small piece of the much larger puzzle we've crafted." As he spoke, Ashley shifted closer to one of the computer terminals. Her movements were deliberate and calm, carefully avoiding any sudden motion that might draw attention. She felt the small device tucked in her pocket, the one key that could turn everything around, the trigger for their fail-safe plan. "And why would we ever agree to be a part of your twisted puzzle?" James demanded, his anger rising. "Tech vision was founded on principles of innovation, ethics, and progress. We won't become pawns in your schemes." The man's laugh was chilling, empty of humor, full of mockery. "Principles, ethics," he scoffed. "Such quaint, outdated ideals in the face of true power. You still don't understand, Mr. Thomas. You don't have a choice. The only question now is whether you'll join us and thrive in the new world order we're building, or resist and be crushed beneath its unstoppable force." Ashley saw her opening, her heart pounding in her chest. With a quick, confident motion, she slipped the device from her pocket and plugged it into the nearest terminal. The room seemed to hold its breath as the screens surrounding them began to flicker and distort. "What's happening?" the man demanded, rising from his seat as the sound of alarms filled the room. The plan was set in motion, and the tide of their struggle was about to shift. James Thomas's voice carried a cold satisfaction as he spoke, his words deliberate and firm. "That would be us." Choosing option 3, fighting back. The room erupted into pandemonium as their fail-safe plan clicked into motion. The building's security systems spiraled out of control. Doors slammed shut and then swung open again, locking and unlocking in a disorienting frenzy. Armed guards struggled to maintain their grip on the situation as their communications were severed, adding to the chaos that seemed to take on a life of its own. James and Ashley moved swiftly, each step purposeful, driven by a shared resolve to fight for their lives, their company, and their future. James rushed at the nearest guard, swiftly engaging in a brutal struggle for the weapon he'd just lost control of. Ashley, meanwhile, had already turned toward the hostages. Her voice rang out with urgency. "Run," she commanded. She worked swiftly, undoing their restraints with practiced hands. "Get to the lower-level safe room," she urged, her eyes scanning the room to assess the danger. She could feel her heart racing, but her focus was razor-sharp as she freed Emily and Jack, pushing them towards safety. As the hostages fled, Ashley's eyes darted to her father. He was locked in a desperate struggle with the leader of the syndicate, a battle that seemed to embody everything they had fought for. Their movements were a blur of strength and determination as they fought for dominance. Her heart pounded as she searched the room for anything that could give her an edge in the fight. Her gaze settled on a heavy paperweight sitting on her father's desk, a globe, symbolizing Tech Vision's far-reaching dreams. Without a second thought, she grabbed it, and with all the force she could muster, slammed it down onto the syndicate leader's head. The man crumpled to the ground, momentarily dazed, giving James the opportunity to stumble back, panting. His face a mix of relief and concern. He looked at Ashley with gratitude etched in his features. "Are you okay?" he gasped, the adrenaline still surging through his veins. Ashley nodded quickly, her breath quickening but steady. "I'm fine, Dad. But we need to get out of here." They knew their victory, however brief, wouldn't last forever. There was no telling how long their fail-safe would keep the syndicate in disarray. The sound of shouting and hurried footsteps coming from the hallway echoed through the chaos, a harsh reminder that the battle was far from over. The syndicate's forces were regrouping, preparing to strike back with greater force. The tension in the room was palpable, every moment thick with the weight of what lay ahead. James Thomas nodded solemnly, his expression hardening. "You're right, but we can't just walk away from this." His gaze shifted to Ashley, the resolve in his eyes unwavering. "We need to get to the server room. That's where the key to everything lies," he added. The information there could bring down the entire syndicate operation. Ashley's mind raced as she processed the gravity of the situation. The server room was 3 floors below them, and the building was swarming with hostile forces. "If we can access that data," James continued, his voice steady despite the pressure mounting around them, "we may be able to expose not just the conspiracy, but the very foundation of this entire organization." Ashley took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "Okay," she said, her voice filled with unwavering determination. "Let's do it together." With quiet precision, they stepped over the still form of the syndicate leader, who lay unconscious on the floor, and made their way toward the exit. Ashley glanced over at her father, her heart swelling with emotion. The events of the past few weeks had turned her world upside down. She had unearthed a hidden family, uncovered a dangerous conspiracy, and now found herself facing stakes that seemed unimaginable. Yet, in this chaos, Ashley knew one thing for certain: she was exactly where she needed to be. They would face whatever dangers lay ahead, not as separate individuals, but together. The sound of heavy footsteps approaching pushed them into action. Without exchanging a word, James Thomas and Ashley Thomas locked eyes, each filled with unwavering resolve. They knew the stakes today. They would stand their ground against the syndicate and fight for Tech Vision's survival. As they sprinted down the hallway, the blaring alarms only added to the chaos. It was a race against time, and they were fully aware that the most crucial part of their mission had just begun. The truth about the syndicate lay within reach, as did the power to reshape the future. But survival was the first challenge they had to conquer. If they could endure long enough, victory might just be theirs. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting eerie shadows as they descended the emergency stairwell. The incessant shriek of alarms and the distant shouts of their pursuers filled the air, a harsh soundtrack to their desperate flight. James glanced back every few moments, checking to ensure Ashley was still with him and that they hadn't been overtaken by the enemy yet. Their every step was measured, but they both knew it wouldn't be long before the chase escalated. 3 more floors, James panted, his breath ragged. The adrenaline coursing through his veins helped mask the fatigue, but the weight of the past few days was catching up with him. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest, but there was no time for weakness. Ashley nodded, her face set in a mask of determination, and didn't say a word. Her thoughts were a blur as she relived everything that had led them to this point. Each footfall echoed in her mind as they pushed forward, closer to the answers they desperately needed. But ahead, an even greater unknown awaited them. With every step, they drew nearer to the truth. And with it, the impending danger grew ever closer. The rush of adrenaline surged through James Thomas, propelling him forward. He could feel the weight of the past few days pressing on his every movement, yet he didn't allow himself to slow down. Ashley, her expression unreadable and set in steely resolve, nodded without speaking. Her mind raced, replaying every pivotal moment that had led them to this point. The truth about her parentage, the web of corporate deceit, and the shadowy organization known as the Syndicate, it was all too much to digest, yet it was undeniably real. As they reached the landing near the server room, James motioned to Ashley. He leaned in, pressing his ear against the door, listening for any sign of movement on the other side. "I think it's clear," he whispered, slowly turning the door handle. "Stay alert. We don't know how many are left inside." He cautioned. They stepped into a dimly lit hallway, where the shadows of the emergency lights stretched along the walls like silent witnesses to their every move. At the far end, the reinforced door of the server room stood as their goal. With a calm, controlled breath, Ashley focused on the rhythm of her breathing, pushing aside the mounting tension. She visualized the success ahead the moment she and her father would access the servers and unlock the information that could change everything. But just as they were halfway down the hall, a noise from behind them stopped them in their tracks. The unmistakable sound of the stairwell door opening echoed through the stillness. "Quick," James whispered urgently, yanking Ashley into a nearby office. They pressed themselves into the shadows, holding their breath, knowing their next move would be crucial to their survival and their mission. Inside the dimly lit office, they crouched behind a heavy desk, their bodies tense and still, trying to control their breathing. Outside, a gruff voice broke the silence. "They have to be here." Another voice followed, colder and more commanding. "The boss wants Thomas and his daughter now." Ashley placed a calming hand on her father's arm, silently urging him to stay composed. Her heart was hammering in her chest, the pounding in her ears almost drowning out the sounds around them. The door creaked open, and the beam of a flashlight sliced through the dark, sweeping the room with methodical precision. The light hovered just inches from where they hid, as if searching for the slightest movement. For what felt like an eternity, they remained frozen, the air thick with tension.